Hey everybody, welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. We are coming to you live on March 5th, 2026. If this is your first NLC webinar, know that our Cathedra webinars get their name from the Creek word for learning. And today you're going to be learning leadership skills for supervisors from your instructor, Dr. William R. Latchford, who is president of the Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also happy you could tune in for the webinar with us. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. This is just a friendly reminder that the materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Moving forward, if you would like to come back and perhaps view the recording of this webinar, or if you want to look into the rest of the series that Dr. Latchford has prepared, you can find all of that in the courses section here on the learning platform. And if you want to tune in for a future webinar, you'll log in like you did today and you'll click on that green banner at the top of your screen. We do ask that you join with listen-only capabilities because we are recording the webinar and it helps to cut down on any audio feedback. And if you've joined and you found that your sound isn't coming out of the correct device, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, where I have a telephone icon in the screenshot, you might have a headset icon. But either way, that will bring up a list of your speaker devices so that you can select the proper audio output. Though we do ask that you join on mute, we do still encourage class participation. We want to hear your questions. We want to know your comments. If there's any tech support issues that I can help you navigate through, we will primarily rely on the public chat for this. If you don't yet have it open, you can open it to the messages column that's the left-hand side of your screen, and that'll pull up a chat between you, the webinar attendees, me, the NLC staff, and your instructor. Just come down here to the box where it says send message to public chat, type what you'd like to say or ask, and then you can hit enter, or you can click on the little paper airplane button, and that'll send it in where everyone can see it. Over in the shared notes section, that's just below the public chat, we have a list of important links for you. Things like the webinar feedback survey, a link to our YouTube channel, different things like that are in there. If you did join and you need to mute your mic, you can come down to the bottom of your screen where the mic icon is. And if along the way you think we missed a question, you can always use the hand raise feature to draw our attention to it. We'd love if you introduced yourselves in the chat before we got started. You could let us know your name, where you're tuning in from, your work or your role in Indian country that probably led you to today's webinar. And then your tribal affiliation if you have one. You might be a tribal employee and not have your own affiliation. That is okay too. You are also welcome. And then while you're introducing yourselves in the chat, it's with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor, Dr. William R. Latchford. And Will, I have made you presenter now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on leadership skills for supervisors. So as you're introducing yourself on the chat, I want to start out by just asking you several questions just to think about, not necessarily to have a response for me, but more for you, just to, as we navigate today, it brings you back to some of the key traits that you want to have and you want to think about and put yourself in the mindset of being a good leader, right? So the first one I want you to think about is take a moment and think to yourself about the best supervisor you ever worked for. Not the most senior person that you've worked for, or maybe not even the most smartest person. Just one that you brought out, that supervisor brought out the best in you. What did they do to make you want to perform at your highest level, right? It wasn't about just having a good relationship with them or just that they liked you or you liked them. What type of supervisor brought that highest level of work productivity out of you? And what drove that behavior that they did? What drove that for you to raise to your highest level of work product? Did they listen to you? Did they trust you? Did they show that they can hold you accountable but be fair? Did they make you feel like you were valued? You were a valued part of the team. So think about that for a second. Those type of individuals that we've all encountered through our career that are out there. As you're thinking about that, I want you to think about now the worst supervisor that you worked for. What made that experience difficult for you, right? Most people don't leave jobs. They leave because they're being supervised or leadership is not at the level it needs to be, right? They just don't leave jobs for any reason. It's usually driven a lot of high percentage of the time it's because of leadership. The difference between those two experiences and those two questions I just asked you comes down to one thing. It comes down to the leadership skills of the individual. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today as we move forward. The second question I just want you to ponder is how many people here on the webinar call were promoted into a supervisor role because you were good at your job, right? Just think about it. Did you get promoted because you were good at your job and you did your job at the highest level? And of course that happens, right? Organizations promote just to promote because the next person's in line is the next person up. The most senior person automatically gets promoted to be the supervisor, or because the individual, the frontline individual that's doing the best job and really providing that high level and meeting those expectations, they get promoted because of the job that they're doing at that lowest level. And this happens a lot in a lot of organizations. You may be a great technician. You may be a great caseworker or a great housing inspector or the grant coordinator. And because you do your job and you perform very well, the thought process may be, they do their job really well, and the position they're in, they're going to make a great leader. But what happens is, and a lot of times organizations don't realize it, and us as individuals, we don't realize it, is that when that transition happens, the job changes. You may know the job at the level you're at, but when you step into a leadership role, suddenly the job changes. You're no longer responsible just for the work of yourself. Now you're responsible for guiding other people's performance, right? You are responsible to get the work done through others. And that requires a totally different skill set for us as we transition from a frontline supervisor into a supervisor role. We're going to discuss that a little bit today. The third question that I want to ask is along these lines. As research consistently shows that one of the biggest reasons employees leave organizations is it's not for pay, it's not for workload. As I talked about, it's because of leadership or poor supervision. Really, in fact, many workplace studies show that supervisors influence employee engagement more than almost any factor in a work environment. And what does that mean? It means a supervisor really has the power. They have more power than the leadership at the highest level at times to build strong teams. They have the power to create a positive work environment. They have the power to increase productivity. Or unintentionally, you could create frustration or disengagement amongst the employees. The difference often comes down to how you as a supervisor lead your people. We're going to discuss that a little bit today. And the fourth topic I want to go over before we really dive into the leadership skills for a supervisor is, and you can put in the chat here to get your feedback so you can kind of see, everybody can kind of see we're all in this together. A lot of times, we don't reflect enough to see that we're not the first individuals that are going through some of the adversity when we deal with supervision. So I'd like to use the chat on this particular question because I think it's important for everybody to always remember and go back. You're never alone. Somebody is going through that same challenge, or somebody has gone through the same challenge or circumstance that you're going through. They're either going through it now or they've been through it in the past, and you can learn from each other. How many supervisors on the call supervise at least one person? Just type in the number one if you supervise at least one person. How many of you supervise over 5 individuals? Now, here's the really question that I want you to consider and answer, and put yes or no for the answer to this. Is how many of you were formally trained to supervise before you even took on that responsibility? Yes or no? So as you can see, what the individuals that participated, and thank you very much for doing that, the percentage is higher that individuals are not trained before they get promoted. Many supervisors, quite often, unfortunately, they supervise by learning trial by error. And that's not healthy, one, for you as a leader. It's not healthy for your organization. And it's certainly not healthy for the future generations or the future individuals in your program that are going to be taking over in the future. And at the bottom line is when we talk about this, we're all in it to win it for the community that we serve. And when we look at that shortcoming that a lot of us in organizations have experienced throughout our careers and still experience it, and there's a lot of organizations that are out there that failed to put something in place for us as employees, and there's a lot of reasons for that failure. However, from a leadership standpoint, that's a gap that we have to shorten. That's a gap we have to correct. Because at the end of the day, by not training your leaders and not training your supervisors before they get in the position and giving them tools that are going to help them succeed, the person or persons that suffer the most because of that is, number one, your community that you serve. Your customers are unintended individuals that get impacted because of that failure or that gap. The second party is your employees. The people that the individual is going to supervise are negatively impacted because they're learning by fire. The supervisor who was just promoted was learning by fire. And although they're going to try their best, they're going to do a good job, the reality is they're trying their best to get out of the crisis. So they're starting their leadership career in crisis, and they're handling the fires that come day to day, and it just continues to compound and compound and compound. And before you know it, you're moving up into the chain in your chain of command or even responsibilities, and you're still back behind the eight ball because you learned supervision by trial and error or by fire. So we want to try and get in front of that from an organizational standpoint. So I want to thank you today for being on this webinar, because I think it's very important that it's recognized for you, and you're acknowledged for taking the time today to be part of enhancing your professional growth. And I'm honored to be on this webinar with you today and just be able to share some knowledge that I've attributed through my years and that have helped me, some of those shortcomings that have helped me to get to the level that I'm at. But I will also stress to you is that leadership and learning leadership skills does not stop just because you went to a class or you were on a webinar. It's really one of those behaviors that you have to put it into your lifestyle. You have to be able to live your leadership process through, because if you're not using your leadership styles and all the attributes that come with leadership, you can lose some of that, and you get a little rusty as far as being a leader. So you want to stay on top of it. So you want to become kind of a life lesson learner when it comes to your leadership skills. So I commend you for being on the webinar today. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you get something out of it this afternoon. As Brooke indicated earlier, this is the number 8 webinar out of a 16 webinar series that we've partnered with Native Learning Center. This is really a foundation that is going to lead into a leadership boot camp that's out in New Mexico that Native Learning Center is hosting. That is going to be a 3-day leadership boot camp in New Mexico. You can reach out to Brooke in Native Learning Center. It's going to be in August. So these topics are just kind of the front load that kind of give you those little nuggets to kind of just spark some thoughts into how you're leading and how you're doing your job as a supervisor. And then Native Learning Center has developed in partnership with us to do a leadership boot camp. So it'll be a 3-day, very intense, good, positive supervision, leadership, executive management that kind of shortens that gap, as I talked about before, to where it can be given to you in a setting where you can learn, you can thrive from it, and then hopefully you can take it back to your organizations. As I said, this is number 8. We look forward to the future webinars. And of course, if you have any questions, my information is in the chat with my number, and I'll go over that towards the end as well. So I want to take a moment and recognize something that's important about being a supervisor and the role of a supervisor. You know, a supervisor occupies one of the most challenging and influential positions in any organization. It's probably, if not the most important, it's right there tied at the top as far as the most important position within an organization. The pressure and the responsibility that you have the responsibility and the pressure that you could actually make or break an organization if you don't do your job at the level it needs to be done, right? And that's a big burden that we carry when it comes to leadership. Unlike upper leadership or your command or people that are above you, your executives, they focus more like on strategic direction, right? You as a supervisor, you have the most challenging responsibility because you're focusing on that day-to-day, that frontline employee who's focused on completing the tasks and supervising the individuals that are responsible for the success of your program. Supervisors operate right in the middle, right? So you're right in the middle where you have to appease the people above you, and you have to get the work done through the people below you. You're responsible for translating what those leadership goals are and putting those goals into action while supporting the employees who carry out the daily work, right? It's not about an us or them. You're in the middle, so you are both, right? You are responsible for both. And I've heard throughout my career, and I still haven't been able to figure out who it is, but I'll use this term, is that we always use the term they, right? That is a common term that when we're frustrated or we're in a position that, you know, we're not happy with our bosses, or even if somebody gets promoted that used to work with us and they change, right? People say, oh, you've changed, right? And now you're one of them, or you're part of they, right? I haven't figured out who that is yet. So what I would tell you is that since I haven't figured it out in 32 years, what I would tell you is there is no they or them. The reality is it's all of us. We're all in it to win it. The whole organization should be aligned together. But as the frontline leadership supervisor, you have a great responsibility, right? A great responsibility that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to have, and they don't have the opportunity to even be successful at it. And they may not even have the personal drive to be successful at it. So if you're in that position today as we speak, and I'm speaking with you today, is that I encourage you to embrace that, right? Take that positive moment to recognize that you're in a great position to affect change. You're in a great position to help the people that are below you, that can provide that service through them to the community you serve. And you're also in a great position to provide feedback to your leadership to affect change as an overall from an organizational standpoint. You're really that center connection. You're that central connection point of any organization when you're that leadership or that supervisor in that middle management area. When communication flows clearly between leadership and employees, productivity improves, morale stays strong, and the team functions effectively. But when the communication breaks down, we've all been there when confusion happens, frustration happens, disengagement, it quickly can take hold of any organization. So I want you to picture yourself and picture supervisors as the bridge in any organization. On one side of the bridge is management, which focuses on strategies, policies, goals, and expectations. The other side of it is the frontline employees, the individuals who perform the daily work that keep the organization functioning and moving forward. If that bridge is strong, we all know information is smooth in both directions, up and down, right? But research has shown us that a lot of times when We pass information through others, regardless if it's up the chain of command or down the chain of command. By the time it gets to the location that it's supposed to get to, it's watered down, it's changed, it's not the same, right? Leadership must understand the realities of the frontline work, and employees clearly need to understand the expectations of leadership. But if that bridge weakens at all and the messages become distorted, expectations become unclear, and trust is quickly eroded. Supervisors, therefore, carry out an important responsibility. And it's not just to manage tasks. Your responsibility solely is to manage people. As an effective supervisor, you have the ability to motivate teams. You can communicate, and you're expected to communicate expectations clear so everyone understands them. Address any challenges constructively and help employees grow and to replace you. That is your job at any level of leadership, is to teach the people below you to replace you. Create that legacy so when you're gone, when people take over, they're carrying your flag, they're carrying that torch, and they're carrying it on to what you've already built. In today's session, we're going to focus on strengthening those leadership skills for you. We'll explore practical leadership tools that help supervisors guide through employees' effectiveness, communication through clear communication. We want to build stronger work relationships. One of the most important lessons in leadership is that people are different. Not everybody is the same. Every employee brings a special gift to your organization with different experiences. They bring a different level of skill sets, they bring different personalities, and they bring different motivations to the work environment. Because of that, the same leadership approach does not work on every individual and in every situation. And today, as we go through this, I want you to just remember and put in your little toolbox that a great supervisor understands how to adjust their leadership style depending on the needs of the employee and the situation. Throughout today, we're going to discuss a lot of leadership approaches that can help you navigate your work environment. So let's dive into this. Just went over the course overview, a little bit about me. My name is Will Latchford. I'm a doctor in criminology leadership. I had the opportunity over 32 years ago to start with the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and I had the great opportunity to learn my leadership skills from an organization that supported leadership, that provided the opportunity to go and get those courses and get that educational background and get that support and give the support that you need to really be successful. Currently, I'm the president of Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. I go around the country teaching. I teach at several universities, and I'm the co-director of the Florida State University Native American Crime and Justice Policy Institute. The privilege for me is not that I went through all those classes and I went through the top, not only law enforcement, but just leadership educational institutions. The privilege for me is that I had the opportunity to do it. It doesn't make me better than anybody. What it does, it gives me the opportunity to provide a good, sound foundation to pass that knowledge down to everybody that comes across my path. But it also opens doors for me to learn from all of you and learn from your experiences. Because again, I told you earlier, is that we want to look at leadership as a life learning process. So no matter how many degrees you have, if you have one or you have none or you have 5 or 6 or whatever those titles you use, I've had many titles. Titles do not make who you are. Everything you do, you will make it from who you are as a person with your character, your knowledge, and your skill and ability. And leadership really boils down to taking care of people. And that has been kind of the most rewarding thing for me as a leader, is that I've watched people grow. I've watched people succeed me, and I've watched people surpass me, go past me on their leadership journey, right? And that's what you want. You want people to go past you and thrive in their world or whatever condition or community that they're in. Too many negative things are out there. We want people to succeed. You should want every one of your employees to succeed and the best for all your employees. So I'm honored to be here today with you and to just share this information. A little bit about Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. It's owned by Amy Osceola Latchford. She's a member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida, the Otter Clan. And her whole mission is to empower organizations just to always be on that life learning trend to enhance their programs. So she's developed a structure within the organization that we go around the country, including Canada, to provide professional development, community partnership. We build on those relationships, leadership development, employee development, policy, accreditation development, threat assessments, any area that is going to enhance an organization, from school and major facilities, major events, threat assessments. That is the goal of this organization, of Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group, is to really make a difference and give back. And by giving back, taking all the individuals, the consultants that we have around the country that have over 172 years of experience at this point, is to give back to any organization that feels they can be enhanced, as we want to step in and partner with them and provide that, not tell them what to do, just be that arm to be able to support them and guide them in a direction that they want to go so they can accomplish their mission and their goals. As we go through today, I shouldn't say anything that's going to contradict your policies and procedures, but I put this in all my trainings that I do, as if that case does happen, your success is important for me. So I ask you to follow your policy. So if I say something that's contradictory in your policies, please follow your policies so you don't get in trouble. And your policies are written for your organizations to be successful. And sometimes, if you find that the policies are not successful, trainings like this can help you go back and rewrite your policies so you can bring your policies up to date or current modern standards. So please follow your policies. It's important to us that you're successful and your organization is successful. Learning objectives today, we're going to talk about time management. We're going to talk about leadership styles. We're going to talk about communication and coaching. It's very important. Communication and coaching go hand in hand, right? And we're going to give you some tips on conflict management, how to deal with conflict resolution when it comes to being a leader. Throughout this process today, we're going to talk about supervisory foundations, right? We want you to understand the role, the responsibility, and how that transition to leadership impacts you, right? These are things sometimes we don't think about. That transition of going from frontline to a supervisor, right? That's a big transition. There's a lot of weight that comes with that. We want to talk about leadership styles. So we're going to go over some leadership style assessments, and they're going to help identify your natural approach in developing and adapting to certain situations. I mentioned communication and coaching. We want to build relationships through effective interactions and development. That's not being liked by all your employees, right? If you have that mindset that you need to be liked by employees, that's not going to make you successful as a leader. It's not about being liked. If you do the job the right way and you treat people the right way, you treat people the way you want to be treated, right? You will be liked, right? You're not always going to be liked, but people will respect you. People will appreciate you. They will trust you. They will recognize that you're in it for them, right? It's not about putting being liked first, because that's where you will fail being a leader. Do not focus on being liked. Focus on doing the right thing. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about conflict management, time management, prioritization, and we're also going to talk about creative problem-solving techniques. So as we look at the first chapter we're going to go over is the supervisory foundation, right? These are things that sometimes we forget, or sometimes maybe we didn't even think about. It's just understanding the role of a supervisory position. So if you look at this pyramid, again, the executive's strategic vision, right? The executives of your program have strategic vision. The managers are the planning and the organization, looking at the organization as a whole. And then when we look at the supervisor, your job is to direct and implement those directions, those strategic visions and the plans that are given to you. Your job is to put them into play, get the employees to do the work through to the community, right? And of course, the frontline employees is about execution and customer contact. As a supervisor, you occupy the critical middle of this pyramid, right? So if you look at the pyramid, you occupy the middle, and it's the middle ground between strategic decision-making and the employees executing the daily operations. This position that you're in requires a balance between organizational objectives and meeting the team's needs. And that's a very difficult position to be in. However, somebody, regardless of how you got there, somebody saw something in you to be in that position. Once you agree to the position that you're in, you cannot go backwards. You have to embrace that position as a supervisor. So I say this regardless of how you got into your position. Embrace that position and thrive in it. Make sure you're successful. Don't fall for the trap of the poor me or this is how I got here. Take the opportunity to make it successful for you. And what you're doing, you're starting that legacy leadership. So people below you will have the different opportunity that you did, and they'll have the right opportunity that you should have had. Unfortunately, you didn't, but you will give them the opportunity to be a leader and be prepared to be a leader before they get into those positions. So let's look at some of the key supervisory responsibilities that you have. Now, I will tell you and admit to you that early on in my career, I went to a training that it was a great training. And to this day, I use a lot of the training material that I was in. But there was one thing that I followed for a couple of years, and I realized that it wasn't necessarily an accurate information that I was following, that I got from this training. And what that was the focus was the community comes first, the organization comes second, and the employees come third. So when you make decisions, it's based on those three categories. When you evaluate decision making, is how does this impact the community? Does it benefit the community? And then you check those boxes. Before I go to the next level, I'm going to go to the organization. How does it affect the organization? Is it negative or positive? What do we get at it from an organizational standpoint? Okay, we check those boxes. And then we go to the third one. The employees. How does this affect the employees? Is it good or bad? Right. So by the time you get to the employees, you have your glass is a little foggy because you're looking at the fact that the community's first and you're basing everything around the community. The reality is that teaching was old school, right? And I believe in some of those traits from that teaching. But through my career, I learned and I evaluated it, and I was able to research it and kind of support my thought process now, is that as a supervisor, regardless of what level, but you got to learn this at the lowest level, because if you understand it at the lowest level as a supervisor, then as you move up, you're going to be more successful than what I was at, because I went through a couple of years thinking one way and I had to put the brakes on and I couldn't go back and change the past. So I had to go through the future with a little bit of contradictory, because there were some people that I supervised that they were saying, hey, you told us this a couple of years ago this way, and now you've changed, right? And I had explained that through to them so they understood my thought process. So when we look at the key responsibilities, operational responsibilities and people management, as we discussed today, these are two equal parallels. So I want you to understand that as I go through these today, they're two equally important areas as a frontline supervisor that you have to be almost to an expert at to really be successful. And it's a lot, because you're managing two different areas that sometimes contradict each other, sometimes challenge each other, and sometimes have responsibilities that are different from each other, right? So when we look at that, and I go over this today, I just want you to think about these are equally as important. And I shared that story with you as what I was told. Everything you do, it's about the community first, organization second, employees third, and in that order making decisions. Now my thought process is no. When I make a decision now, I'm going to use those three areas: the community, the community, the organization, and the people, all together. They're all three parallel running together. One isn't as important as the other. All three of them are equally as important, and they're equally justified to have the same attention that I'm supposed to give every issue at every level, right? So let's talk about operational responsibilities. As a frontline supervisor, your job is to implement procedures and policies. You want to monitor quality and productivity, right? You want to look at what type of productivity you're putting out into the community, because the work is going through others. You want to look at the productivity from an organizational standpoint as a supervisor, what you're doing to help those employees be more productive, to build their career and their professional experience. And then from an organizational standpoint, you want to help build that productivity as far as what is that all producing for the operational side of the organization. You want to ensure safety standards. You want to coordinate schedules and workflows, and you want to manage resources effectively, right? That's the operational, some of the operational responsibilities. Some of the people responsibilities and the people management is training and develop your employees, right? You have to take time to train and develop all your team members. You want to provide feedback and coaching, right? A lot of times we just, because we live in crisis, it's all about go, go, go. And we're barking orders, or we're just very snappy at people because it's a go, go, go. We're living in crisis. We have to take the time to stop. Stop at the stop sign, recognize the fact that you owe it to yourself, you owe it to the people below you that you supervise, that they need your support. They need your feedback. They need your coaching. They need your mentoring. They just need your ear. You need to motivate and engage employees. This is a big one, motivating and engaging employees, because everybody's different. Everybody has a life of their own outside of the work, right? And they carry work home, and they carry home back to work. So your job as a supervisor is to kind of figure all that out. How can you separate their personal life from your professional world that they're in, right? So your job is to motivate and engage employees. Your job is to address performance issues, right? We deal with that every day as employees. Sometimes employees come to work and they're not given 100%. They're only given 30%. Why is that? We have to look at addressing those employee issues. And then building team cohesiveness and morale, right? Nobody wants to be around a mediocre teammate, right? Nobody wants to be an individual that is out doing what they should be doing while everybody else or a couple of employees are slacking off, right? We don't want to be around those type of individuals. We want individuals to be in the same position we are, do the same workload that we do as regular employees. A supervisor's job is to make sure that every employee is carrying their weight. Everybody on the team is carrying their responsibility. And we're only as good as our weakest link. So as a supervisor and the lead supervisor of employees, we all have weak links. We have to make sure those weak links are brought up to everybody else. And we cannot allow that weak link to exist in our organization. We have to find ways to keep them at the level they need to be at to build that cohesive team. If we have a weak link, there's not going to be a cohesive team, and eventually it's going to destroy morale. The most effective supervisors, again, you maintain that balanced focus on operational excellence and people development, right? You want to recognize the success in one area that supports the other area, right? Take the time to champion your wins. Take the time to recognize what is good going on in your organization from an organization or operational responsibility and a people management responsibility. And just as equally as important, you have to take the time to look at the bad in your operational responsibilities and your people management responsibilities, because you can take the good and improve the good, but more positively, you can take the bad and you can change the bad to make it good and make it thrive within your organization. Transition to supervision. I call this from me to we, right? This is where the they does not exist. And this is the process that they and them sometimes creeps into an organization. So when we look at the transition to supervision, right, as an individual contributor, our job at the front line as a frontline employee was to just focus on our personal performance and our technical skills. We really didn't have to worry about anybody, right? We just worried about ourselves. You know, we just came in, we checked the box, we did what we had to do at the highest level. We met the expectations of what was required of us, and we weren't responsible for anybody else's actions. We were just responsible for our actions. And then we go into, when we move this transition to supervision, we go into a transition phase, right? Where we have to develop our leadership mindset while maintaining our technical expertise, right? That's important because, and you'll hear me say this throughout this webinar, is that just because I'm a good employee or even a great employee and I have my technical skills and I'm at the highest level of my work environment, does not mean that I'm going to be the best supervisor, right? And as management, and if there's any executives on the call, just please recognize that if you're doing promotions just based on what somebody does in a position, the current position they have, and you promote them just based off of that, most likely you're setting them up for failure, because they have to go through this transition phase and not everybody will be successful at it. Developing leaders mindset, that's a very important practice, because you're no longer part of me as myself. We become we. We become that they or them that everybody wants to point blame at, right? We become that intermediary that is responsible for the success of our employees and the success of others, while balancing the technical and leadership skills, right? That's what makes an effective supervisor. The transition from individual contributor to supervisor represents one of the most challenging career shifts. This is the make it or break it. And this is where organizations sometimes fail, because we assume that our employees know and they have all the technical expertise that they need in the position, because they did such a great job by being a frontline person, right? Success as a supervisor now depends not just on what you do personally, but on what your team accomplishes collectively, right? So it's no longer about how good you are. It's about how good you are plus how good your people are, right? And what that service and how that service is being viewed within the community that you serve. Some of the common challenges for new supervisors: the role ambiguity, uncertainty about boundaries and expectations in the new position, right? Use the chat for me. Tell me a yes or no question. How many of you within the last 12 months reviewed your job description in your current role that you're in? And that's great. The ones that are saying yes, that is great, because, and that's a lot of times I see a lot of no's, but I applaud all of you for the yeses, because that shows the shift for me, which is great in any organization. If we know what those expectations are as a supervisor, then we can communicate down to our subordinates. So that's a piece where, that's one piece that as a supervisor, you can eliminate that challenge if you understand the expectations. Sit down and give your people what those expectations are. As a new supervisor, you want to know what those expectations are for you as well. So that role that you're moving into a new position, you want to embrace whatever those expectations are, and you deserve to know what those expectations are. So make sure you get with your boss before you go out there, because if you know your expectations as a new supervisor, you're going to be able to communicate that down to your subordinates, right? Former peer relationships, navigating change dynamics with colleagues who are now direct reports. A lot of times in bigger organizations, we can promote you and we can move you. So I don't have to have you work with the same people that you've been working with, right? And in communities as small as some of the communities that are on this call, you understand and you have, and you know how it works, is that everybody knows everything about everybody. You all know each other's secrets, right? Not that they're bad or against the law. It's just, you know, these real unvetted opinions of each other. Well, now when you become a supervisor, you have to change. There's no choice but you to change, because it's no longer about you. It's about everybody else in the organization. It's about the people that you supervise. So people are going to take that as a negative. They're going to say, oh, you've changed, right? And in their mind, they're going to look at you as, you know, I know how they were when they were working. I know all those little secrets that people think that they have on you, right? So when you move into a new supervisor position, those peer relationships, if you're not moved out into another program where you're supervising a whole new group of people that you've never worked with or you haven't worked with recently, that's a challenge. That's a challenge that you have to supervise people that today I'm their boss. Yesterday I was their coworker. Two different settings, two different ways to deal with things. Technical and leadership balance, shifting focus from doing the work to leading others to do the work, right? You have to get the work done through others. And that's the difference. And that's a challenge when you go from the technical side of the house to the leadership side. And you have to find that balance. Delegation difficulties, learning to effectively assign the work and maintain the appropriate oversight. When you become a leader, you run into that arena to where sometimes things aren't done the right way and you get so overwhelmed, you just take the approach, well, I'm just going to do it because I know it needs to be done and I don't want anybody to screw this up, right? Or you know it's not going to be done right, so you just do it because it's at your level of expectations, right? You need to learn how to delegate and push the delegation down so the work is being done by others, right? There's a balance to that, but that creates a challenge for you as a new supervisor. For the executives on the call, what I would share with you is that you always need to evaluate individuals that you promote and they're your shining stars in their technical expertise, and then they become supervisors. They need a lot of support from you when they move into the position. They deserve the support from the organization. They do a great job as an individual worrying about themselves, but when they move into that supervisory capacity, these challenges really test them. They really test them, and they need the support from an organization. So when we look at Chapter 2, we're going to talk about identifying the styles, some of the leadership styles you can use. We're going to look at the adapt and adjust, learn to modify your leadership style based on the context and employee needs. And we're going to develop the agility to apply different styles to optimize your team performance. So when we look at core leadership styles, I've written them out in a simplistic way to just give the opportunity to where it's just in layman terms is that, you know, there's 4 leadership styles here. One is direct, right? In a direct leadership style, you have clear instructions and close supervision, right? Best for new employees, best for crisis situations or high-risk tasks. So a directive leadership style is really that clear instructions, close supervision, and it's usually used when you have a new employee that you're kind of holding their hand. You know, they're uncomfortable. You know, we've all had new employees that are nervous. They don't want to screw up. They don't want to make anybody mad or upset. So this as a supervisor, we kind of wrap them around ourselves, and we are a little bit more direct with them because we want to support them, right? Crisis situations, again, we don't have time to sit and give War and Peace and describe everything that, you know, give people 50 to 100 questions to ask. Sometimes we just got to be direct in high risk situations or tasks. Another leadership style is coaching, right? That is moving forward into the 21st century is more of a coaching style. It's high direction with supporting guidance, right? Ideal for developing skills and building confidence. Coaching doesn't necessarily work in crisis environments. And I know a lot of your environments, you're in crisis mode every day. You as leaders take the time to slow things down so you can coach and you can coach your employees in a positive environment without the crisis. Delegating, again, minimal direction and support, appropriate for higher competent, self-motivated team members, and then supportive. High support with less direction, effective for skilled employees who need encouragement. There's a lot of times where we have great employees, again, that we think may be our future supervisors, and we really don't have to hold their hand. We don't really have to oversee them. We can just touch base with them and just support them because they kind of know, they've been around, they're seasoned, they know what to do, and they've aligned with the expectations that's required for them. It's not just because we like them. Their work product and their technical expertise is carrying through. Most supervisors have a natural preference for 1 or 2 styles, but effective leaders require flexibility to apply the right approach to the right situation and the right individual. So there is not one coaching style that you want to use. You want to know all of these, and you want to know when to apply them, but you also want to know on who to apply them. When we look at identifying your primary leadership style, you want to consider these questions. So you can ask these questions to yourself, and hopefully it'll help you derive from a natural leadership tendency. So you want to ask yourself, how comfortable are you giving detailed instructions versus general guidance, right? Do you prefer frequent check-ins or give employees space to work independently? Take a moment and self-reflect on these questions. You can print this slide out and keep it on your desk to remind yourself of some of these things. This will help you balance all four of those leadership styles out. When faced with a problem, do you typically provide solutions or do you ask for input? When do you do that? Do you do that often? Are you consistent with it? How do you respond when a team member makes a mistake? Do you blow up, right? I've had my opportunities where I've had a lot going on. Somebody makes a mistake and I've handled it wrong, right? Now, just as important as the way I handle it is how I'm going to fix it, right? You're going to make mistakes as a leader. You're going to make mistakes as a supervisor. Go back and make it right. Put your ego at the door. Put your pride at the door. Recognize the fact that if you handled it the wrong way or you made a mistake, it wasn't intentional. You didn't do it intentional. You may have had a lot. It's not an excuse, but it's reality. The reality is we're not perfect. Things happen. We all make mistakes. And we're all going to continue to make mistakes in our field and in our life. Do you focus more on task completion or team member development, right? Is there a balance there? There's nothing wrong with getting the work done, but are you also supporting and developing your team? Understanding your default style helps you recognize when you need to consciously adapt your approach and to be more effective in different situations. Self-awareness is the foundation for leadership flexibility. If you can understand yourself, you understand your emotions, you understand how you deal with things, and you understand your employees, you will take the time to reflect honestly of what your natural tendencies are, and you can identify what your core leadership styles are, and more importantly, you'll be able to understand when you need to apply them and who you need to apply them to. So when we look at the situational leadership model, this graph here is a graph by Paul Hershey and Ken Blanchard, both dynamic leadership authors. They have great books that are out there that if you'd like to read or listen to books on recording, I highly encourage you. Both of them have multiple books out there. This model, situational leadership, suggests that effective leadership varies based on two key factors: the employee's competency, which is the ability to perform, and their commitment and willingness to perform, right? So let's go over this slide for a second here. So what I would pose this question to you. Think about the best supervisor or leader that you've had. Hold on one second. Let me get my notes here. As we go through this, the leader that you've had, that you've worked for, and what did they do that made you want to perform your best? Again, that follow-up question, right? So as we go through this model here today, this model is going to teach you something very important. There is no single leadership style that works for every employee in every situation. But if you self-reflect on that leader that you recognize as somebody who positively impacts you, you can put them into this graph, right? Effective leaders adjust their leadership approach by competency and commitment. Now on this chart, it's built with two axes. The vertical axis, which is competence. This axis means it measures an employee's skills and ability to perform the task. At the bottom, you can see it's low competency, and at the top, it's high competency. The horizontal axis is commitment. It's the employee commitment. The axis measures the employee's motivation, the confidence, and engagement. On the left side, you have low commitment, and on the right side, you have high commitment. Where an employee falls in this chart determines what type of leadership approach works best, right? So let's walk through the quadrants here for a second. So quadrant one, which is directing, quadrant one, which is directing low competency and high competent. This quadrant represents who are new or inexperienced but motivated to learn. They want to do well, but may not want to have the knowledge or skill to complete the task independently, which means they want somebody to help them, right? In this situation, supervisors should provide clear direction and specific guidance. Some examples that include is giving step-by-step instructions to solve this if they're in this quadrant, demonstrating how tasks should be completed, providing close supervision, and setting clear expectations. So that's the top left quadrant. Quadrant number 2 is coaching. That's the top right quadrant. On this stage, employees have started developing skills that may feel uncertain, right? They feel frustrated, they're overwhelmed, right? The world is crashing down on them. They might not know what to do, and they lack the confidence in what they need to do to move forward. Your job there is to coach them, provide guidance and encouragement. Some of the examples that you can give them is explain the reason behind the task, answer questions for them, be a good listener, and then answer the questions fully. Encourage their input, right? You want them to provide feedback to you and provide that constructive feedback to them. They thrive on that constructive feedback. An employee may understand the procedures, but struggle with handling the difficult customers, right? So in that example where you have a person who really knows the policies, they know what they're doing, but they have a challenge handling your residents or your some of your tenants, right? You may want to say, look, you handled most of the conversations well. Let's talk through a few of ways that you could respond when someone becomes frustrated, right? Let them know what they did good and then deal with the confidence issue, right? So that builds both confidence in the employee and it builds that confidence in them as well. Quadrant 3 is supporting. It's the high confidence and the variable commitment. The supervisor's role is from directing to supporting, right? At this stage, employees know how to do the job, but they're really not motivated or engaged to be fluctuant, right? So listening to employees' concerns, involving employees in decisions, recognizing their contributions, and encourage ownership of their work. Give them the opportunity to be part of the solution. Give them the opportunity to be part of the environment. If you can do that, that will build trust and engagement with those employees. And lastly is delegating. Delegating is the bottom left quadrant. High competency, high commitment. This quadrant basically is about the capable and motivated employee. They require minimal supervision. The supervisor can delegate the responsibility and autonomy. Some of the examples on how to deal with these employees: you can allow employees to manage their own projects, kind of give them a little bit more rope because you have the confidence and you know they know what they're doing. Trust them in making decisions, but always make sure that they come back and brief you on what they're doing so you have a pulse on what's happening within your program. And monitoring results rather than controlling every step, right? Monitor the results, but don't over micromanage them. Don't be over them to where they feel that they can't breathe. An example with that would be a seasoned team member may be given responsibility for coordinating a project or mentoring a new employee that you have. Your role may become more supportive than directive, right? Just kind of watch, observe, let them know that they're doing good in certain areas, and just sit back and let them be the front. How leadership flows across these quadrants is very important. Leadership is not static, right? Employees move through these quadrants over time as they gain experience, they gain confidence, and they gain skills. We've all been in these quadrants here on the screen. We've all been in the position one time or another in our career. We've been, and currently in your supervisor role, you can also be in these quadrants, right? So we've all been there. A good supervisor constantly asks the employees constantly ask themselves, what does this employee need from me right now? What does this employee need from me right now? What direction are they going? What direction can I give them? What coaching do they need? What support do they need? And is it okay? Should I give them autonomy? Right? Those are some questions that you can constantly ask, and that will allow you to become a dynamic leader that can adapt your style to help employees grow. So this specific leadership module, if you can wrap your hands around it and educate yourself on it and understand how you can not only navigate it, but how you can use it in your environment, you will really support the employees that work for you. Matching styles to employee development. Again, we just went through this, but this slide, you can see it on, once you get the slide, Brooke sets it up. This gives you a little bit more information that you can use to help you navigate the actual example that was on the previous slide. So we went over that. I don't want to go over that again for you for the sake of time. Developing leadership flexibility, right? As a leader, you got to be flexible, right? So we want to be able to understand assessing situations. We want to consider the employee's skills, experience, motivation, along with task complexity and urgency, right? We need to know our employees better than they know themselves. In order for us to be good supervisors, we need to know them better than they know themselves when it comes to how we assess the situation. Because if we know our employees, we know where we can put them when we need them from an organizational standpoint. We want to choose the appropriate style, select the leadership approach that best matches both the situation and the employee. And again, that's always fluent because it's not always the same, and it could change multiple times during one day. So we want to understand what those styles are, how to apply them, but also understand the behavior of our employees so we understand what style we need to apply. We want to communicate clearly. Communication is something we always have to work on. It's something that does not go away, and we always have to improve on. So we want to explain what your expectations are and the level of involvement you have in your work. So many times I run into people that they don't know the expectations because no one sat down and went through what those expectations are. They may have seen the job descriptions, but nobody has told them what's expected of them and what is required of them. Sit down, let people understand what their job is as their supervisor, as you being their supervisor. And again, we want to monitor and adjust. We want to pay attention to the results that are out there. We want to pay attention to the behaviors that are going on within our program. And we want to be prepared to shift our approach when needed. Leadership flexibility is a skill that develops with practice and intention. Start by identifying situations where your natural styles may not be the most effective approach, right? You want it to be just natural. Every time that you flex your leadership flexibility, that no one recognizes it, it's just a smooth transition into that core leadership style. Let's talk a little bit about communication and coaching. Communication is the foundation of any successful organization. Effective supervisory communication, you establish the trust. It clarifies expectations, it prevents misunderstandings, and builds engagement. Studies show how the teams with strong communications are 50% more likely to have lower turnover, 25% are more productive than poorly communication teams. More innovation and solution focused when you have better communication. Communication skills represent the single most competency for supervisor success. Now, I will tell you that it's not just the verbal communication. It's your body language. It's how you write your emails. Communications is in many different forms. And we as leaders and supervisors, we need to understand what those forms are. If it's listening, speaking, reading, and writing, we need to be able to make sure that our communication skills are at the highest level. I can tell you there's times when I used to write emails in my previous job where I'd write an email because I was in a certain mood, and I can tell you I wrote a really good email, but I never sent it. I wrote it. I was in a position where may have been upset. I may have been angry. I wrote it and I got it out. I put it in writing, and boy, it was a great email. It was something that it was so great I could probably frame it and hang it on a wall. But it was one of those emails that I don't want anybody to see. I certainly don't want to send it to the employee because it was emotional. So I deleted it. And when I deleted it, it kind of went away, and I was able to sit and meet with the employee afterwards and provide them positive, constructive feedback to where they were able to identify those areas without it being emotional. So we want to make sure it's not just our verbal communication. We want to make sure that we do not provide that negative attribute through our body language, how we look, or how we even write our emails. I will tell you, if you're a leader in this room and you walk into a room, your subordinates, just like, don't forget where you came from, your subordinates can tell you what type of meeting that's going to be based on your body language coming into the room, based on how your facial expressions are, based on how you carry yourself. Sometimes you walk into a room and you have a lot on your plate. You don't say hello to anybody. Based on that mood that you're bringing into the room, People are watching. People are watching what every move that you're making, and they understand what you're doing. A lot of times what frontline supervisors do is they forget where they came from. If you go back, you were one of those people in the chairs that you were watching your boss come into the room and you were evaluating, okay, what type of meeting is this going to be? What kind of mood are they in, right? Is this a meeting where I don't want to say anything to anybody, right? Or is this a meeting where, you know what, this is open dialogue and we can go ahead and talk our mind, we can say our piece? Or is this a meeting like, oh no, I'm not saying one word because I don't want my head chopped off? So we want to recognize that communication foundation. As we look at active listening, right? We want to be in full present when we're talking to people. We want to eliminate any distractions and give your complete attention to the speaker, right? Right now, I can probably tell you 80% of people on this call are not sitting looking at the screen with your eyes attentive on my picture. If you are, thank you. But I could probably say most of you are not. And why you're not? Because you have other things going on and you're multitasking, which it doesn't offend me for that. I'm not your employee and I understand the position you're in. However, when you're dealing with your employees, shut your computer down so you can't see your screen or turn your screen towards the wall. Shut your phone down, put it inside your desk so you don't have the tendency of picking your phone up or looking to see what text came in or if the email went off. Give your employee the opportunity for you to be fully present. They deserve it. They want it. They want your approval. They want your attention. And your job is to provide that to them. Your job is to support them. If you're talking to them and you pick up your phone to look at a text message that came in or an email that came in, you're not fully present with them. You're doing yourself an injustice, you're doing them an injustice, and you're doing your organization and your community injustice because you're not fully present. Give that person the value of importance, right? They are an important part of your team. Let them know how important they are by your actions. So be fully present with them. Listen to their understanding. Listen to understand. I can tell you right now, I think my opinion and the research I've done is the fact that a lot of people listen to respond. Listen to understand. Don't listen to respond. Don't worry about that response. You're intelligent. You're smart enough to figure out what that response needs to be once the person gets done talking. Right now, I think what's happening is a lot of leaders are in a position where they're sitting there formulating what they're going to say. So as soon as the employee stops talking, boom, we can just shoot out what the answer is, right? The reality is don't do that. Give the person the opportunity for you to listen, to understand what they're saying as their supervisor. That's part of your job. Listen to them to understand. Do not listen to them to respond, right? Focus on comprehension rather than formulating your response or what you're going to say. You can also ask, part of that active listening is to ask clarifying questions, right? You want to seek additional information to ensure what your understanding is accurate, right? And a lot of people do not necessarily know how to tell stories, so they're nervous, they're talking to you, you're their boss. Give them the opportunity to seek and answer some of your further questions. Victoria, thank you for that. I missed that piece. I will tell you that is just as important as ask the person to put their phone away, give you that same respect in there, because if you can do it from your side, the reality is they're going to do the same thing, or I hope they follow that if they have the respect and trust in you. But if not, sit down and say, listen, I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to ask you respectively to do the thing. Let's have a discussion here, just employee to supervisor or employees of the tribe together. We want to problem solve together. Let's leave our phones aside until our meeting's done. Just be respectful about it, and they'll follow through on that. So, Victoria, thank you very, very much for that. Reflect and paraphrase. You can restate key points. Repeat what they say to you. That's an opportunity for them to know that you're listening. Give them that opportunity to see that, you know what, they care about me. They heard what I said, right? You may not agree with it, but you heard what they said, and you're just repeating it to confirm what the comprehensive and validating what they're saying. Active listening demonstrates respect. It builds that trust within your coworkers, and it ensures that you receive accurate information for better decision making. Effective feedback techniques. There's a couple different ways. Constructive feedback, right? Be specific and behavior focused. You want to connect the impact with expectations, balance with positive observations, provide guidance with improvements, and use the feedback sandwich thoughtfully, right? Give that an opportunity to be thoughtful to them. Recognitions and praise, make it specific and timely. Just as important as the message that you're putting to them is when you do it, right? So you have to strategically think that way. Match the recognition to the preference, connect the organizational values, be sincere and always be authentic, and use both public and private recognition. Never discipline in public. Always provide that opportunity to let people know in public how you appreciate them. Effective supervisors maintain a positive to negative feedback ratio from 3-to-1 to build support team culture while addressing those issues, right? So let me talk about the 3-to-1 ratio for a second. It's an opportunity for you to provide effective feedback. You can find two balances as a supervisor. You're recognizing good performance, and at the same time, you're going to use corrective behavior problems when they occur. Research has shown that leadership and organizational psychology is very supportive, and it suggests that active, effective supervisors, when using the 3-to-1 ratio, come up with a positive to corrective feedback ratio that is more successful than any other presentation that's out there. This means that every piece of corrective feedback, supervisors should provide at least 3 positive feedbacks to 1 reinforcement comment, right? So why does the 3-to-1 ratio matter? Employees only hear criticism. They often become, right? So we've all heard it that all we hear is the bad stuff, right? We've all been in environments where we've heard that. It's become defensive, right? We become defensive. We get disengaged. We're not motivated because all we're hearing is the complaints, the gripes. Our boss has nothing positive to say. They don't even see the good stuff that we're doing, right? But when positive feedback is given regularly, employees become more improved. They become more open, right? That starts with leadership to identify that type of behavior. So if you're hearing that from your employees, you may want to evaluate your environment, evaluate your culture, and you may want to implement the 3-in-1, right? Some examples for the 3-in-1 would be this. Imagine an employee assisting a community member at the front desk of your housing office. A supervisor may say to the employee, "I appreciate how respectful you were when helping that client. You explained the process very clear, which made things very easy for them. I also noticed how patient you were and stayed when the line got busy," right? The corrective feedback could be, one thing we can improve is entering the information into the system immediately so the next shift is accurate and has accurate records, right? This approach recognizes the good performance. It encourages improvement, maintains employee confidence, and it provides that opportunity for supervisors can walk away doing 3 things well. They adapt their leadership style to the needs of the employee. It guides the employees through growth and development, and it balances accountability with encouragement. When you as a supervisor do these things well, they truly bridge that gap, as I talked about before, between management and the front line. So 3-to-1 can be very effective if you use it right. Talk a little bit about coaching mindset. Coaching differs from directing by focusing employees on development rather than just task completion. I can tell you part of my career, we made some really good taskmasters. We focused too much on the task and we did very little on coaching them, right? And I can tell you that moving forward on some of the areas of my leadership, I would have done it different because I focused too much on the task because I wanted to get all this done. We were living in crisis looking at the task. If we start looking at it from a coach's mindset, we can do several things, right? Believing in team members, and their potential growth, right? So if we're looking at the coaching model, we'll have a better belief in our team and what their growth can implement and impact our organization. Viewing mistakes as a learning opportunity. We all make mistakes, right? And sometimes the community pushes the button and they raise the flag, right? They push that red button, or the bat phone rings, and everybody's in crisis. Sometimes as supervisors, we have to stop that red button from being pushed, right? And bring everybody back to a level of say, okay, this was only a mistake. It's not the end of the world. Let's figure out and identify why it got like this. And then let's fix the problem. Let's put some solutions in place. Give the opportunity to be a learning environment instead of a discipline issue. Ask powerful questions rather than providing answers. As a supervisor, you want to be supportive with autonomy during coaching while providing guidance. And you want to celebrate progress and effort and not just the results, right? We may not have reached the expectation, but we've seen that movement. We've seen the needle move. Let people know that you've seen that. Let people know that you've seen that change and you've seen that they're putting the effort in. Effective coaching builds confidence, competency, commitment in your team while preparing them for a greater responsibility. We're going to take a look at the GROW model, the goals, reality, options, and way forward. The GROW model is something that it can be effective. You can communicate with your staff and every individual. You can create a GROW plan for them, right? A GROW coaching plan that is going to be successful, right? The GROW is you create their goals with them. Let them establish some goals that are going to be clear, specific objectives for how you're going to coach them in conversation, right? The reality is explore those current situations and those obstacles and resources available. You're doing this as a team. You're the coach and you're leading your players. The options, identify possible approaches and solutions to achieve the goals and the way forward. Determine specific actions, timelines, and accountability measures. This model provides a simple but powerful structure for coaching conversations that lead to clarity, commitment, and action. Just remember, as a supervisor in a coaching setting, your primary ask questions rather than give answers throughout the process. So when you're coaching, you're not giving them the answers. You're allowing them to think about the questions you're asking, and they're going to formulate and come up with the answers. Again, staying with the coaching conversation examples, here's some examples that you could read that give you some feedback. The quality of your questions determine the quality of your coaching, right? Open-ended questions that prompt reflection lead to more meaningful insight than closed questions with yes or no. Stay away from the yes or no questions when you're coaching because yes or no, it's too easy for people just to give up and give you a one-word answer. You want them, they're very smart. Human beings are very smart. They're very intelligent. Your employees are smart. Put them in an opportunity to extract that information and that intelligence to, one, help themselves, but two, help your organization as a whole. Let's talk about conflict resolution, transforming disagreements into opportunities. We want to understand the workplace conflict, right? Common sources of conflict, limited resources, competing priorities, different work styles and communication preferences, role ambiguity and unclear expectations, personality clashes and interpersonal tensions. That's a big one that I see across the country. Individuals sometimes have personality clashes, mood swings, interpersonal skills. Sometimes we don't know how to deal with our interpersonal skills. That creates a lot of tensions within a work environment. Organizational change and uncertainty, right? The impacts of these areas from a view of a supervisor, decreased productivity, damaged workplace relationships, increased stress and burnout, higher absentee and turnover, and a toxic team culture, and a disengagement from employees. As the supervisor, your ability to address conflict effectively directly impacts your team performance. A lot of the times, the old school way is, we're not going to deal with it. It'll work itself out, right? Or a supervisor will just come and keep that nonsense out of work, right? That's not the way to handle it anymore because they're keeping it out of work, but it's still festering and the problem has not been resolved. So you as a supervisor have to deal with conflict management and it really builds and goes to your credibility as a supervisor. Conflict management styles. Thomas Kilman has a conflict mode instrument that identifies 5 approaches to managing conflict on 2 dimensions, right? Assertiveness, the extent to which you try to satisfy your own concerns, or cooperativeness, the extent to which you are trying to satisfy other concerns, right? So compelling is a high assertiveness, low cooperativeness, prioritizes own concerns, often at the expense of others. Useful when quick and decisive action is needed, right? So that's something that an area you could use as a supervisor is the competing method, right? Collaboration method, you could seek the wins and the solutions that fully satisfy both parties and the concerns. You know, it's a team effort. You've solved that conflict by working together. Compromise, moderate. The moderate section finds a middle ground where both parties give something to gain, right? Useful for temporary solutions when time is limited. Again, I talked about avoidance. It sometimes can be useful, but that's one that I've learned is you don't want to let that fester for so long, because that could blow up into a bigger issue and get the whole organization in trouble by just avoiding the conflict. And then accommodating, right? Yields to the other party's concerns, often to preserve relationship, appropriate when the issue is more important to the other person to be goodwill, right? Sometimes somebody will give just to say, you know what, I don't have the energy to do this anymore. And you know what, I'm okay. Let's just move forward. And they give in a little bit, right? Effective supervisors can use all 5 style strategies depending on the situation, rather than defaulting to one. Strategies that you can use into conflict resolution. So if you memorize these, you know how to apply them. I think it's something you can use to help deal with and minimize conflict within your organization. When to use each style, again, competing, emergency situations, unpopular but not necessarily decisions, or when defending against people who take advantage of the non-competitive behavior. When to use collaborating, you can find integrated solutions when both sets of concerns are too important to compromise, learning from others' insights, merging perspectives from people within different viewpoints. Compromising when goals are moderate, important, but not worth potential disruption, when opponents with equal power are committed to mutually exclusive goals to achieve temporary settlement to complex issues. Again, avoidance when an issue is trivial or more pressing matters take priority, when potential damage from confrontation outweighs benefits, to let people cool down and regain that perspective. And then accommodating when you realize you're wrong, when the issue is more important to others than to you. You build that social credibility, credits for later issues to minimize loss and to be overmatched. Conflict resolution process. This is a process you can use. Your preparation is just as important as the conflict, right? Your preparation could make the conflict even worse if you don't prepare right. You want to schedule a private conversation. You want to be clear on what those goals are, and you want to manage your emotions, and you want to keep the emotions down in that meeting. Discuss the perspectives, use active listening, acknowledge the emotions, focus on what the full understanding is. You want to define the problem, identify the core issues, and separate people from the problems. A lot of times it's not the people, it's the problem. The people are just making it about people. But the reality is it's probably a bigger problem that has nothing to do with the people. They're just bringing the personal agendas involved. Generate solutions. You can brainstorm options without evaluation, focus on mutual interest, and again, agree on an action, select solutions, clarify commitments, and establish a follow-up type procedure. This structure approach helps transform conflict from adversarial confrontations in a collaborative problem-solving method, right? So you could call 2 people in that are having a problem, bring them in and sit down and go through this process and have them be part of it and let them realize that they're figuring this out themselves. You just happen to be the driver that is helping them through the conflict. Communication techniques for conflict resolution. You want to use I statements, express your perspective without blame or accusations. Instead of saying you always miss telling the person or putting out there, you always miss the deadlines. You know, you can start by saying, I'm concerned about our meeting. are concerned about us meeting our projected timeline when reports are delayed, right? Kind of put the burden on you and your concern. Use the I statement. Separate facts from interpretation. Distinguish between observed behavior and your assumptions about it. Instead of saying you don't care about the quality, you could put, I noticed 3 errors in the last report. I was wondering what happened. Did you happen to catch that? Right? You can kind of take the sting out a little bit so you're not adding to the conflict. Right? And then appreciative inquiry, focus on what's working and building on a positive possibility. Right? Instead of saying, why do our meetings always run over? You can put in there, what helps us to make the most efficient meeting? What can we do to make this meeting the best? As we talk about time management and prioritization, we want to maximize productivity while maintaining a work-life balance. Supervisors' time management challenge. Supervisors face unique time management challenges, including constant interruptions and competing demands. I will tell you, many a times I'd go into the office in the morning and my day would get hijacked. Everything that I needed to get done that day, I didn't get any of it done because my time management wasn't necessarily where it was at. I had all these issues happening and I wasn't directing them or delegating them. I was taking it up on all myself. So we want to manage ourselves to have a better time management and look at those unique characteristics that come at us. Balance administrative tasks with people management. Unpredictable crises requiring immediate attention. Managing both personal workload and team workflow, and serving as an information conduit between levels. I understand sometimes things happen, and those are just days, hopefully, are very minimal. But if you have days like that every day, you have to sit back and look at your leadership and your time management, right? So sometimes days happen, they get away from you, but if it's a constant, you want to look at your time management. Effective time management isn't about doing more things. It's about doing the right thing that aligns with your supervisory responsibility and your organizational goals. A matrix for prioritizing different things within your control. You can look at what's urgent and important, right? Those are the things you're going to do first, right? Second, look at what's important but not urgent. You can schedule that out. You can look at urgent but not important. You can delegate that or limit how you're going to deal with that, or neither is urgent nor important, and you can eliminate that or minimize it, right? The most effective supervisors, you spend most of their time on what's important but not urgent quadrant, which requires time spent in crisis mode, right? So a lot of times we're comfortable in that scheduling mode. This is one of those areas you want to look at. Maybe you can maneuver, you can put some of your tasks in different areas in the matrix that can help you balance your work-life balance when it comes to your time management. Practical time management strategies, again, time blocks, specific schedule time blocks for different types of work, right? Take an hour in the afternoon. Usually what I did between 4 and 5 or 3:30 and 5, I would basically just shut everybody off for me unless that crisis happened, where I'd sit behind closed doors. I'd go about what I went through during the day. What am I doing tomorrow? And I'd kind of close those issues out that I had so I didn't take them home with me. I get it. You're still going to take it home for you. Most of you in positions of management, you take your work home for you. But if you can find a way to minimize some of that stuff that you take home by scheduling out a time block in the afternoon to go over some of your things, you may not be in a position where you're taking some of your work home. Strategic delegation, identify tasks that can be delegated to develop team members, be clear. Delegate includes outcomes, boundaries, resources, and check-in points. Meeting management is so important. Don't just have meetings to have meetings, have productive meetings. If you need to send a memo instead of a meeting, do that, but have a clear meeting. When you have a start and a stop time, employees appreciate that. Don't go over your time. Stick to that so people see that we're here for the meeting. There's work that still has to be done. We're not just sitting here to hear each other talk. It needs to be productive. Again, email communication, we went over that. You want to make sure you manage your emails, manage your communication through those emails. I know a lot of you probably get emails, and recognize the fact that you're always on your phone. Give yourself an opportunity throughout the day. Schedule an email block so you can go through your emails. You can give those quick responses that are there that can help you be better at time management. Creative problem solving. This is a process you can use. I apologize for the at the top there. I'm not sure what happened in my PowerPoint with my system, but I apologize for that error at the top. This process, you can clarify, which define the problem, and which clearly and gather relevant information. And then you go to generate multiple possible solutions without judgment. Then you drop it down and you refine promise ideas and assess feasibility with the development. Then you can implement and create an action plan and execute it. And then you evaluate your problem solving process through the evaluation phase. Creative problem solving is a cynical process that can be applied to both individuals and team-based challenges. The most common mistake is to rush the solution before you fully understand what the problem was. So we want to establish, as a frontline supervisor, we want to establish the fact that we have a problem-solving process that will help us clarify the problem, generate some solutions to the problem, refine the promise of ideas, and assess the feasibility of what our solutions are going to be, implement those solutions, and then evaluate it. And as we look at our journey today coming to a close, this webinar was to enhance your professional development, to create strong foundations, provide a little bit of feedback on effective communication, navigate challenges, and inspire innovations when it comes to frontline supervisors. Remember, leadership is a continuous journey of learning, practice, and adaptation, and I encourage you to apply these skills daily on your leadership growth. These are the references that I use for this PowerPoint. These are all great books or articles that you can read. And my contact information is in here if you need to email me, or even my contact number is here. And what I would tell you before I close is this. Somebody at one point in your career saw something special to give you an opportunity to lead others. Embrace that opportunity. Your subordinates need your attention. They need your guidance. They need you to hold them accountable. They need you to support them. They need you to recognize where they're at and help them develop game plans so they can have a successful professional development career. Give them that opportunity. If you choose to be a leader and you took that position on, provide the people below you your best. They deserve your best. Your organization deserves your best. And the reality is, if you give anything less, then you probably shouldn't be a supervisor. But what I would tell you is, everybody that is in a position of supervision, somebody saw something special in you. You have value, and just carry that through. Don't let if they haven't told you that, don't let that prevent you from being your best every day that you come in. Take care of people. Teach your people the way to do things right. Teach them to replace you so they're successful, so you can create the legacy when you retire and you move on, that the work was meaningful that you did, it was impactful, and it's carrying on through future generations. Thank you for your time today. I look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Brooke, I'll turn it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Will. Another great installment in the leadership series. I encourage y'all to go to the courses section and check out classes 1 through 7. This was the 8th installment. I have put the link to today's webinar feedback survey for you in the chat. I'll put it once more. This is an anonymous survey. Your name or email won't be connected to it. It's about 2 to 3 minutes long, and it just lets us at the Native Learning Center know what's working and what can be improved upon for the future. There's a place where you can suggest topics for future webinars that we could try to get. So it helps everybody involved, you, the attendees, Will, the instructor, and us at the NLC. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That's going to be on next Tuesday, March 10th. This is Steps to Starting a For-Profit Business with Vince Franco, who's founder and CEO of Next Venture Consulting. It'll take place at the same time as today's webinar, so 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, or 10 a.m. Alaska. We encourage you to check out our other recorded webinars. They're housed on our YouTube channel. There is a playlist called the Cathedral Webinar Archive. I'll be placing today's recording up there tomorrow morning once it generates. But YouTube is a free resource for you to use, so I encourage you to check out all the different recorded webinars and trainings that we have online. I am putting my email into the chat, so if you ever need help finding something on there, I am happy to help you. We encourage you to check out our other upcoming events. We post about them on our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you are a podcast fan, you can listen to our in-house produced podcast, the Hopathanga Native American podcast. You can listen to that wherever you're listen to podcasts, but we also post the recordings with our special guests to our YouTube channel also. There's a whole playlist for that too. But otherwise, that is all we have for you today, folks. Thank you so much, Will, for an incredible presentation. Thank you to our attendees for tuning in and joining us today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off, but I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their day and their weekend beyond.
Thank you, Brooke.